Hello everybody, and welcome to another StarCityGames.com exclusive Magic Online video. Today I'm going to be recording with a deck that I've been working on recently, and one of the decks that's on the short list for what I'm thinking about playing at SCG Louisville this weekend, and that's Abzan Humans. So where this came from was there's a 4-color Humans deck that's been doing somewhat well online for a couple months now with cards that it uses black for cards like Sin Collector and Zathrid Necromancer, and then I'll have blue for stuff like Reflector Mage and maybe some counter spells in the sideboard. But overall, I really didn't like the mana base, and I just didn't really like the Reflector Mages because I thought that the Reflector Mages helped the most in the creature matchups, which I wasn't too concerned about the creature matchups anyway. So I've cleaned up the mana base some, and I've been playing just 3 colors, Abzan. So this is a more aggressive take on Collected Company, because besides our mana creatures that we have, like most Collected Company decks, which we have 6 total, I have 4 Noble Hierarchs, because it's just simply the best mana creature in Modern, and 2 Avacyn's Pilgrim, because it has the human synergies. We also have 4 Champion of the Parish to start off as our 1-drops here. So we're looking to use Champion of the Parish early, and we want to get it down early because it'll grow each time that we play a human, and we want to be a lot more aggressive. So the aggressiveness gives us a good chance of beating decks like Titan Shift, for example, because we can race them. Sticking with that aggressive theme, we have 4 Thalia's Lieutenant to help make our team larger very quickly, and 4 Mayor of Avabrook, which on the front side gives our humans +1/+1. Mayor of Avabrook by itself is not a very good card. You really need the other humans around it, because if it's just the only creature on the battlefield, it's just a 1/1. Now, if it transforms into Howlpack Alpha, though, then we have a scary threat. I mean, look at that werewolf. That looks pretty scary. So Howlpack Alpha can allow us in board stalls to just go wide and just make green wolf tokens at our end step. So it's a real good card whenever we want to go wide. Either buff our humans or make wolves on its own. It's not a very good card against removal heavy decks because it's not a good threat on its own. So we have three of those in the main deck. And then with our 3-drops, we have some 3-drops you don't normally see in Collected Company decks. Most notably, Zathrid Necromancer. This is a card that does not show up in Modern too often, but it's a really good way to grind through the removal decks. We all know how good Voice of Resurgence is, because Voice of Resurgence will replace itself with a token whenever it dies. And Zathrid Necromancer does that for not only itself, but for every other human that you have. It allows you to attack more aggressively and trade because you'll know that you'll get zombies. And Collected Companying into a couple of these can really make your opponent's removal pretty bad. The other card that we don't see too much in Modern is Sin Collector. Sin Collector, there we go, is actually in a really good spot right now in Modern. Basically, every single deck has plenty of instants and sorceries in their deck. Like we have Grixis Death Shadow, of course, has plenty of instants and sorceries, plenty of targets. And then 2 of the biggest decks right now are Blue-Red Gift Storm, obviously amazing there, and Titan Shift, which if you can take an Alvar Promise or Escape Shift, that could leave you in a pretty good spot. We have 1 Orzhov Pontiff in our main deck to be able to fight the other Collected Company decks, or maybe kill a lot of Goblin tokens from Blue-Red Gift Storm, or also just make combat pretty nice for you because you can just buff your team for a turn as well whenever it comes into play. And then we have our grind elements. 2 Eternal Witness to be able to get back our Collect Companies or Path to Exiles, and 3 Tireless Trackers. Tireless Tracker is just a card I'm just more and more impressed with the more I play with it. It's just so good against removal heavy decks. You want it to be your last threat. You usually want to play it with when you're playing your 5th land drop. So on turn 4, you can play it and then play a land and get a clue and crack the clue right away, usually. So to back up our creature base, so we have 29 creatures in our main deck, which is a lot for the Collected Company deck. So we have tons and tons of hits. Our only spells are, of course, for Collected Company, one of the best cards in Modern. It's just an amazing card. 4 Path to Exiles, maybe the best removal spell in Modern. These, as you see, most every Collected Company deck has 4 Path to Exile, 4 Collected Company, just because these 2 spells are just so incredibly powerful. I also have 1 Dromoka's Command in here, just to give us one other piece of removal to be able to get rid of the pesky creatures that you need to, such as Devoted Druid and Goblin Electromancer or Baral Chief of Compliance, stuff like that. But it's also very good against Lightning Bolt. Make sure your creatures stay alive. You can prevent the damage. There's not too many enchantments running around the main board of other decks, but it's just another versatile removal spell that can have other applications against cards like Lightning Bolt or Anger of the Gods. As far as the mana base goes, we have 3 Cavernous Souls to be able to help name our humans and just help us go from playing something like Champion of the Parish into Mayor Averbrook into Zathra Necromancer. Cavernous Souls can really help with that. We have just a very light black splash in the entire deck. There's no black spells that aren't humans besides these Leyline of the Voids that are chilling over here on the sideboard that we'll talk about in a little bit. So Cavernous Souls is a pretty good land there. Now, you don't want to draw too many Cavernous Souls because then you won't be able to cast spells like Dromoka's Command or Path to Exile. So we only have 3. We have 3 basic forests. I value basics very, very highly. So I'm playing 3 basic forests, 1 plains, 1 swamp. Could even see me playing a second plains. Over here we have 8 total fetch lands. The Windswept Heaths are the best ones because we're mostly going to want basic forest and basic plains. Like I said, we just have a light splash of the black, so we just need 1 black source really out. We just need like 1 Cavern of Souls or 1 Overgrown Tomb or Godless Shrine. And then 3 Verdant Catacombs, because again, we're going to mostly want basic forest, but then also I have 1 Marsh Flats to finish out our fetch lands, just in case we want another way to get basic plains or swamp. So instead of just having 4 Windswept Heath, 4 Verdants, I have 1 Marsh Flats in there. Shock lands, I basically have 2 Temple Garden, 2 Overgrown Tomb, because green's the most important color. So 2 green-white, 2 green-black, and 1 black-white. Now, I know you're probably thinking, why am I saying I have 2 Temple Gardens? Because there's only 1 here. Because then the other Temple Garden I've just replaced with a Horizon Canopy. So it's like my other dual land that's green-white. So I have the 2 green-white, the 2 green-black, and then 1 black-white. We're mostly going to, like, what's typical with this deck is to get Overgrown Tomb first, and then basic plains. Like if we're playing a mana creature, we'll get Overgrown Tomb first. If we're playing a Champion Parish, we'll probably get Godless Shrine. We usually just get one of those 2 lands first, then get the basic of the other. I like getting Overgrown Tomb and basic plains. I like that combination over Godless Shrine Forest because I want the black and the white source to be different sources to be able to cast these Sin Collectors and Orzhov Pontiff. So I want the black and the white to be on different lands if I can. All right, so let's talk about our sideboard. So I think the reason to play a deck like this is because it is pretty good in the other mid-range creature matchups because you can go very big, very fast with Champion of the Parish and Thala's Lieutenant. But we don't have a lot against combo decks, really, just like a lot of creature decks. So we have the Sin Collectors and the Orzhov Pontiff for a little bit, but basically we have the Sin Collectors in the main board, but we need a lot more against combo decks. So we have 1 Aethersworn Canonist to be able to help against basically Blue-Red Giftstorm. There's a few other decks. Like I like bringing this in against Titan Shift, for example, because it shuts off their ability to be able to cast Summer's Pact and then go grab a Primeval Titan and put into play. Or just even use 2 ramp spells in the early game or mid-game or so. One, Kataki's War Wage, obviously just one of the best cards against Affinity. I have one more Orzhov Pontiff. Again, the other, any other deck with mana creatures or Affinity or Storm, whenever they can make a lot of goblins, stuff like that. 2 Aven Mind Sensors to be able to stop not only Titan Shift from searching their library, but then, well, keep them from only searching the top 4. But then also it's a very good card against Gifts Ungiven as well. 1 Comball Console of Allocation. I think I got through that one. It's basically another Ethersworn Canonist. It is a human as well, but you know, it'll keep your opponent from casting too many non-creature spells. This card can also just kind of come in a variety of matchups, even against Control or Titan Shift, if you just want to get a few drains out of it to be able to help your clock. A 4th Sin Collector, because I just think Sin Collector is so important in the matchup, so we have it. 1 Linvala, Keeper of Silence, to be able to stop Devoted Druid shenanigans or any other mana creature deck. So we have a lot of like creatures that are good in certain matchups. And so whenever we have a toolbox of creatures in the sideboard, what I've started doing, which I really like, is just putting 1 Eldritch Evolution in my sideboards with these kind of cards, with just all sorts of different cards that are what you need for a certain situation. And even though we don't have anything like extremely valuable that we want to sacrifice, like a Voice Resurgence or something, and we have some things that aren't bad, like Zathra Necromancer, or like the mana creatures. But like against Affinity, for example, you really want Kataki. So this is basically a second copy of Kataki. Or against Storm, maybe we need Ethersworn Canonist. We have a second Ethersworn Canonist. Or maybe a 3rd Aven Mind Sensor against Titan Shift, and so on. A second Linvala against other Vizier Company decks. So like the 1 Eldritch Evolution is basically a second copy of every single one of these creatures in the sideboard. So I found the 1 evolution to be really valuable. If you're ahead though, and the evolution can just end the game because you can just go find a Thal's Lieutenant to make your team bigger and swing for lethal also. So I've been really happy with 1 Eldritch Evolution in the sideboard. Control matchups can be kind of difficult whenever you're playing a bunch of small creatures. If they're playing a bunch of Supreme Verdicts, that doesn't really line up very well. So I have 1 Elspeth Knight Errant to be able to help in the control matchups, just another angle of attack. The reason why I'm using Elspeth Knight Errant as opposed to any other Planeswalker, such as Gideon Ally of Zendikar or anything like that, is because Elspeth can end the game very quickly. I really like the second +1 ability of the target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying. When you're playing against other matchups that go to like ground stalls, maybe you're playing against an Abzan type deck and they don't have Lingering Souls out, but they just have like a bunch of Tarmogoyfs or something like that, and you have a somewhat big Champion of the Parish, for example, being able to give it +3/+3 and flying can just end the game on the spot. So I like that ability with Elspeth. So it can either generate its own tokens or end the game quickly by giving your creatures flying. And then I have 3 Leyline of the Void for all the different graveyard decks. I don't really want Rest in Peace because Rest in Peace would shut off my Zathra Necromancers and my Eternal Witness. So I like Leyline of the Void as just exiling the opponent's graveyard. Against a deck like Dredge, they usually have Abrupt Decays, and so having something like Leyline of the Void's pretty nice there because it's not Abrupt Decayable. So that's our deck. So let's go ahead and get to the games and see how we do here with Abzan Humans.